Welcome to the Science of Success exclusive subscriber video course, how you can create time for what really matters in life. Let's dig into the meat of conducting an 80-20 analysis. Step one is simple. Focus. Mute your phone, close your email, close your browser, take out a pad of paper. I love using graph paper personally, but it doesn't really matter. The key here is to get rid of the distractions. You can't bring your full attention and full mental energy to the contemplative routine of doing an 80-20 analysis without starting with the step of focus, without carving out an hour or 2 hours of concrete time to do this activity once. I actually like to do an 80-20 analysis quarterly on my life, and it creates incredible results every time I do it. Huge dividends on my time and helps me create time for the things that really matter in my life. Step two is what I call the core 80-20 analysis. You want to ask each one of these questions and brainstorm and write out the answers by hand on a sheet of paper, right? I do this with my business and my work, and I also do this with my personal life, and I do them separately on separate sheets of paper. So for business, I ask myself, what 20% of sources are creating 80% of my problems and unhappiness? Are these problem customers, specific clients, people that I deal with, employees, partners, bosses, etc.? What 20% of sources are creating 80% of my problems and my unhappiness? And then we flip this and we look at the positive side, right? What 20% of sources are creating 80% of my desired outcomes and my happiness? And this is really important. The 80-20 principle can be applied both positively and negatively. This is a critical insight. You can apply it to things that you want to remove from your life because 20% of things are creating 80% of your unhappiness and your problems. And you can apply it to things you want to do more of, right? 20% of things are resulting in 80% of your desired outcomes and your happiness. And I like to do this for my personal life as well. The same questions. What 20% of sources are creating 80% of my problems and my unhappiness, right? That's the negative question. And then what 20% of sources are resulting in 80% of my desired outcomes and my happiness? This is the core, but there's more that you want to do after this, right? The next is we start with these follow-up questions. These help you dig in and get specific about how to really look at the meat of this. And before we talk about the follow-up questions, I want to share just an insight or an anecdote. If you're working on the core 80-20 and even working on these follow-up questions, don't beat yourself up and feel like you have to have perfect answers. Go with your gut. Go with your initial reaction. Just get something down on the paper. Just start flowing, start pulling these ideas out. And if I get stuck, if I'm confused, what I'll often do is look back at my calendar. I'll look at meetings and activities and try to say, how was I feeling? When was I frustrated? When was I angry? When was I the most, the most stressed out? And these things often help me pull out the answers and figure out, okay, where were these activities and did they create happiness? Did they create unhappiness? Right? So these follow-up questions do the same thing. If I was completely incapacitated and had to work for 2 hours a day, what would I focus on? This helps get at what are the really critical things, the things that you know deep down create the most results. Then let's ratchet that down even more. If I was even more incapacitated and I had to work only 2 hours a week, what would I focus on getting done? This is a great forcing question because it takes you to the really critical, most important activities that you're actually executing on every single week. The next question is great too. What are the top 3 activities I use to fill time to feel as though I'm being productive? What are my crutch activities? These are often things that fall into that 80% bucket, right? Things that take up 80% of your time but only create 20% of your results. This is often busy work, things that you do that you feel like, oh, I'm getting a lot done. But if you really look at it, it's not contributing to results. And that's why they're called crutch activities. And then the last question is, when do you feel starved for time? What commitments, thoughts, or people can you eliminate to fix this problem? Really look at your calendar, look at your activities, look at your to-do list, look at the things that make you feel stressed, that make you feel starved for time. Are they people? Are they individuals? Are they meetings? Are they specific commitments that you've made? Look at that and try to figure out what are the opportunities to eliminate or remove those. And lastly, step 4, this is the most important step. Take action. The 20% of high leverage positive things in your life should define your to-do list. These are the things you want to be doing, the things you want to be executing on every single day. The 20% most negative things, these should define your not to-do list. These should be things you should be actively creating action items around, eliminating, not doing, or thinking about more specifically, how can you delegate them? How can you eliminate them? How can you automate them? And the next question that helps sometimes get over the barrier of the fear of cutting out some of these negative activities is asking yourself, what's the financial impact or other impact of these activities, right? What would happen if you just stopped doing that? What would happen if you stopped talking to that person, if you stopped replying to those emails, if you stopped going to that meeting, if you stopped doing that particular thing? And you can also apply that in a positive context and ask yourself, what is the financial impact of the most positive things, right? There's usually a few really critical things and activities that create most of the financial positive results in your life. Then you want to ask yourself, how can these activities be eliminated? How can they be delegated? How can they be automated? These are critical questions. You want to really dig down and try to find the answers. Even if you can only delegate, automate, or eliminate a few of the things on your not to-do list, that can create a tremendous amount of time savings for you. Often several hours per week of time saved by delegating, automating, or just not doing and eliminating the things that create negative results in your life. And the key is that you have to define concrete steps, concrete next steps for how you're going to do these things. Concrete action steps that go on your to-do list that you actually execute so that you can take action on the positive things and so that you can remove the negative things. And this last point is really, really important. You have to focus on eliminating as much as possible first. You have to focus on decluttering, removing the debris so that you can focus on the things that matter, so that you can create the time and the energy for the things that are the most important in your life. Again, even if you do this exercise one time, you're going to see tremendous results. But this is something that I do quarterly for myself. Every quarter, I sit down, go through all of these questions about my life and my work. And every single time, I eliminate distractions, things that are wasting my time, and I create more time and more leverage in my life. And remember, to the example of Warren Buffett, this is how you create leverage. This recursive focus on compound time over time creates more and more and more positive results in an upward spiral. But you have to start with eliminating first and getting rid of those bad and negative things and activities. If you want to go deeper into applying contemplative routines to your life, we did a Science of Action webinar on this where I spent 2 hours not only explaining these core ideas, but going into my own personal routines, pulling out actual examples of previous 80/20 analysis and 5 other types of contemplative routines that I've implemented in my life. I highly recommend checking out the Science of Action if you want to dig deeper into that. And we interviewed Peter Shallard and went way deep into what the Science of Action is and how it works. If you want to check out some podcast episodes where we interviewed guests and discussed a number of these topics, I would start with our interview with Greg McKeown, where we explored the idea of essentialism and how to really focus on what actually matters. If you want to go deeper into the 80/20 analysis, I recommend checking out our interview with Perry Marshall, where we go way deep into explaining the 80/20 analysis. And lastly, if you want to get an overview of contemplative routines and habit formation, check out our interview with Charles Duhigg. All of these are available on successpodcast.com. And as email subscribers, you know where to find these resources. If you don't, just shoot me an email. You know my email already, but it's matt@successpodcast.com. I'm happy to point you in the direction, answer questions about Science of Action, or tell you more about contemplative routines in general. Thank you for being a subscriber to the Science of Success. I hope you enjoyed this. And I want to reiterate, the 80/20 principle is an incredibly powerful contemplative routine. If you use the exercises and strategies that we shared in this video, you will create powerful, positive results in your life. But don't get hung up on it. Don't build it up to be something that's this big, daunting task. Carve out an hour, set aside an hour on your calendar in the next week, and do an 80/20 analysis. You'll be amazed by the results. Thank you again for being an amazing subscriber to the Science of Success. I hope you enjoyed this exclusive video guide on how to create time for what really matters in life.